tap in?
Though it's been a long time. Really been
It's
a
been a
long
long
time,
time. Yeah, great
dog.
seeing you, bro.
For real, it's been and I've been in New York a couple of times, but it just never occurred to me that let me get in contact with this dude. Let him know like I'm here. Let's hang out or something
Yeah,
like that. But
yeah,
next time, man, when I'm up there,
yeah. Let
man,
me know.
I'll link you. I'll link up with you, man. We can just do something. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
let me just get this show on the road. Hey, everybody,
Yeah.
welcome to the very first episode of Fresh Wave Podcast. I'm your host, Fresh Wave, actor, screenwriter, independent filmmaker. And this right here, I've known this man since 1992, right?
A very long time. A very
Very
long
long
time,
time.
brother.
Yeah, we went to school in Nigeria, went to boarding school,
hmm
and the
hmm
stories that I could tell is
Yeah,
is better than Game of Thrones. Let me tell you that.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
Better
Oh
than
man,
Game of
yeah,
Thrones, man. I know this guy. Yo,
yeah.
introduce yourself to everybody, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Tolu Ajayi, um, background in finance, worked in the finance industry. I've enjoyed it for a little bit over 20 years. I didn't want to date myself, but I've enjoyed it. It's been great. It's been awesome. I've got two beautiful daughters, a wife, and living a dream, living a dream.
Hey,
What else can I say about myself?
you're a huge fan of horror movies. That's
It's big, big fan.
listen.
And it's funny because I was actually trying to figure out how you remembered that. It's been
Oh,
over 20, 30 years, and the fact that you remember that, that's notable.
let me tell
When
you
I
why I
saw that
remember.
and he said horror movies, come on. I could talk about this all day.
Let me tell you something. The reason why I always
Yeah.
remember is that whenever I see Pet Cemetery, I always remember
Yeah.
you because you made me watch that thing. We all watched it downstairs in boarding school,
Yeah.
and when it was movie night, and
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep for days, and you just kept laughing at me.
I know.
Like, what is
I
wrong with
know.
you?
I know. And that's
And
the
you
thing. I
loved
have
it, and
this
I'm like,
chip.
yo, this dude is mental,
I
man. How
loved
do
it.
you?
And that's the
Yo,
thing
so
about
let
horror movies. I've always loved horror movies. I've the same ick that other people have not to watch horror movies. I don't have that. I don't, it doesn't exist with me. The scares, the gore, the gratuitous gore. I just look at it and I take it in stride. But other people, like, if you're cringy, if you don't like blood, if you don't like, the intestines of a human being being blown out, or brains being blown out, or zombies eating through flesh, I love all that. I just look at it and I laugh.
well, see, for me, those ones are
Yeah.
not scary. Like Saw,
Okay. Yeah.
the gory part, like like what's the other one?
Right, 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 right.
Like yeah, like the zombies and stuff like that. That's not scary to me at all.
Oh, that's not
That's just
scary.
normal. But you see something like this right behind me?
The others, yeah.
Yeah. Now
Yeah,
the
my
others
wife's the
wasn't.
same way too. Yeah, my
Yeah,
wife's
the
the
others
same way too.
wasn't
She
really too
says
scary.
like realistic horror scares
Yeah.
her. So realistic like ghosts, like things of that nature. You're walking through a dark alleyway and hear a bump and you can't quite make out what it is. Those are the kind of horror movies that scares my wife as well. But the stuff that's unrealistic, you know, like
Yeah, like
Nightmare on
The
Elm
Walking
Street.
Dead.
Yeah, Nightmare
Yeah,
on Elm
Nightmare on
Street,
Elm Street.
Freddy
Now, well,
Krueger.
when I was young, when I was a little kid, that scared me. But
Yeah,
now I can watch
yeah,
that. That's nothing.
yeah,
But when
yeah.
you're talking about Pet Cemetery, you're talking about The
That
Exorcist,
cemetery.
you're talking about The
Yeah,
Ring.
yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm
right. The
not doing that,
original
man.
versions
I
of
can't.
those
So
movies, the
where?
original versions, not the
Yeah, the original.
remakes. Because
Yeah, yeah.
all those movies, what Hollywood has started doing is they've started to make have renditions of those same movies. So there's a remake of Pet Cemetery, and I took a look at it. It's fine, but it's
Yeah.
not like the original. You got to go back and look for the original.
Oh, I still I have a copy of the original
Oh, the
in
original.
one of my
Yeah,
streaming database.
yeah,
I'm not gonna watch it.
yeah.
I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that.
No, it's
Still
awesome.
remember that
Yeah,
scene where the mother was her body was contorting and stuff like that, and she was like, "I'm
yeah,
coming to get you," and you kept doing
yeah.
that shit to me back then, and I used to scare the shit out of me. I'm like,
Oh
"Yo,
man,
no,
yeah.
don't, oh, no, I can't watch that." But here's my
Yeah.
thing: where
Okay.
did the fascination for horror films come from? What is it?
I actually don't know. I can't quite put a finger on it. I would probably say because I've always watched horror movies. I've always been fascinated by horror movies. I don't know if if it has to do with the, again, like I said, the gratuitous gore, just for me, it's all unrealistic. Ghosts, things of that nature. You ask certain people, they say they've seen ghosts. They've not seen, I've never seen a ghost in my life. I couldn't sit here and even draw out a ghost for you if I wanted to. So it probably has to do with the gratuitous gore, just my fascination with the unknown. It's also another thing, just fascination with things that, are inexplicable, right? It's not everything that human beings understand, right? There's certain
Mm-hmm.
things we just don't understand. And so my fascination with anything of that nature to just kind of draw me to horror movies. So
Mm-hmm.
like the movie you have in the background, the other Sixth Sense, I would put Sixth
Mm-hmm.
Sense in that same bucket, right? Like ghosts, just mentions of the unknown, of it's I take it all in great stride. It's all fun for me. So I can't quite point to where it came from, but I've just been, I can't even remember the first horror movie that I saw to even, maybe, I would probably say maybe the original George Romero Night of the Living Dead, the one that's in black and white. The
Oh,
what?
okay. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I
those
remember that
were
one.
one of the first horror movies that I can remember seeing as a little kid. And I was just fascinated by it. Some folks were scared by it. I was just fascinated by how zombies were tearing through flesh, tearing through human body. I was like, this is amazing.
It's yeah. That's funny you
Yeah,
should say that because I have
yeah,
I'd say like one of the scariest ones I saw was Return of the Night of the Living Dead.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah,
that
yeah,
one scared the shit out of me. I was pretty young
yeah.
when I saw that one.
Also a classic. Also a classic. Yeah,
That's a class. Yeah, it was classic one too. So, are you the only
yeah.
one in your family that's, like with your brothers and everything like that? Are you the only one that likes horror films, or do they share that passion with you?
I'm one of. I think my older brother watches horror movies as well, but not as much as me. Not as much as me.
Oh,
Like I get in depth with horror movies. I have a subscription to an app, to a horror movie app on my Apple TV. It's called Shudder.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I
So
know.
I really, really get into it. I
Yeah,
buy horror movies. I just, dude,
so that's your
I'm
favorite
such
genre.
a horror movie buff enthusiast. I wouldn't say favorite, but it's one of. For sure, it's one
Okay.
of my. I mean, if I'm buying subscriptions to a horror movie app, that almost
Yeah,
qualifies
yeah,
as an
yeah.
enthusiast,
You're
right?
really up
Yeah,
there. Wow. So
yeah,
what if
yeah,
apart from horror movies, do you like,
yeah.
do you also devour like maybe like horror comic books or like graphic novels or something like that?
Graphic novels, not so much. I used to when I was a teenager, when I was in my
Mhm.
teenage slash 20s. I used to, but not as much anymore. Not as
Oh,
much
okay,
anymore.
okay.
Yeah,
So what will be so okay, now this is gonna be a very funny question. It's probably gonna
yeah,
be impossible. You're
yeah,
not scared of any horror film. You're not frightened by them. So which one is the scariest that you've seen that you'd be like, okay, whoa, this got me.
yeah.
Like this
That's
got me.
that's a great question, and I've seen a lot of them. I've seen a lot of them, and I don't scare easy.
Yeah.
Um, I can't quite point to one particular movie that I would say, oh, this is the scariest. But I
Mhm.
can mention a few that was like, whoa, okay,
All right.
okay, yeah, this one's different. I would probably say the first Exorcist. That one was scary.
Yeah, that's
That one really got to me. And when I say got to me, my definition of got to me is when I
different.
turned the TV off, when I turned the movie off for a day or two, for a couple of days, I'm still running the scene through my mind, and I can't quite get it out of my mind. So The Exorcist, the first one was stuck with me for a very, very long time.
Hmm.
Um, I want to think of another one. I can't quite. Um, I'm pretty sure it'll come to me, but I
Okay.
can't quite think of them. But that one, very, very
That one
notable,
got
high up there.
that one
The
got you.
Exorcist.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
The
that one
Exorcist
got to me
got
for
me.
sure.
Yeah, The Exorcist
That
got
one
to me
got to
too,
me for
because
sure. Yeah,
yeah, when I watched that, I was in college when me and my friend watched that one night, and
yeah,
bruh, I
yeah,
don't sleep with the light on. That day I slept with the light
yeah,
on and the TV on. I said, yeah, that one, even just the poster, I think that it's
yeah.
The poster is
Exorcist
just
was rough. Yeah,
yeah, it was like the poster is just plain, but in its
yeah,
plainness, it's
yeah,
terrifying. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
You see all the horror
yeah. No,
films,
absolutely.
they got so much going on with the poster, so you're just like, okay, is this a real horror film? Is this a comic
Right.
horror film or
But
something?
that one was
Ex-
simple.
that was just simple, and
Simple. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
just like the poster for Jaws.
The
You
Jaws.
know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? You just got the shark
yeah. That's
looking up
right.
at the girl there, and
Just
it's simple,
that's
but it tells you like, yo, there's a monster going, there's a
that's right.
monster under there. So
That's
yeah,
right.
it's a
That's right. Which
so
just goes to show you, it's not. Sometimes it's simplicity that does that does everything, right? It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Exorcist. If you think about it, the cast of Exorcist weren't more than like maybe six folks throughout the course of the movie. They were just like six folks.
that is true.
The main character, the pastor, the mom of the character, and maybe two or three other people. I mean, can you
Yeah,
really
there are
remember
two
anyone
pastors,
else?
there were two
There were
priests.
two, exactly, two pastors. Yeah,
Yeah. So that
yeah,
was crazy. So speaking
yeah.
about that, because we've talked we it seems like to me, it seems like
Hmm.
the old horror films really get it. Like
Yeah,
they really do it.
yeah,
Today it's more like gore
yeah,
and just well, we'll come to the slasher period for a second there, but it's
yeah,
more like it's
yeah.
gory and all that kind of stuff. In your
Right.
estimation, is it like the horror film genre is kind of like, I don't want to say it's dead, but it's more like it's
Mhm.
not really the way it used to be back in the 80s and the 70s, maybe in the 90s too.
Um, I would, I would probably. I mean, is that a fair characterization? I would probably say so
Or
because,
let's
yeah,
just say let's say
yeah,
Hollywood, as opposed to
yeah.
like maybe independent filmmakers. Because when you say Shutter is mostly in a lot of independent filmmakers and stuff like that, right?
Independent filmmakers. That's right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, they
they
don't
might
show a
be
whole lot of older, yeah, horror
yeah,
movies. Yeah,
but their style is more like in the older realm. Like, they really get
that's
the
right.
horror. Yeah. So are you saying, in your estimation, is Hollywood like not really knowing how, they don't really know how to do horror films the way they used to back in the days, if you compare it to today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because I would say I haven't watched anything that has been done, say, in the past maybe 5 years that has been notable. I mean, there's been one or two notable names here and there. But I can't think of anything that I would say sticks with me till today. And it probably has to do with sometimes, when you think about movies in
Mm-hmm.
general, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like you've seen it all, right? You've seen how many times are you gonna do a vampire movie? How many times are you gonna do a zombie movie? How many times? There's only so many times you can tap into the zombie genre that it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel like, okay, I've seen this, right? Unless you take it, you know, you take it down a different path. Like one of the, and this is not even a horror movie, but I mention it because it's like a zombie movie. There was some movie that I saw recently, and when I say recently, within the last 6, 7 months on Netflix, was a zombie movie. It was done by what's the name of that guy? Something Snyder. Um,
Is it Dan Snyder? Is it not Dan Snyder? Zack
no, not
Snyder?
Dan Snyder. The same dude that has done the Batman movies. The more
The
is it
more recent
Zach?
Batman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
I
yeah.
know who you're talking about. I can't remember the name right now. Okay, I know who you're talking about.
You
Yeah.
know, okay, you remember? So
Yeah.
he did one that's on Netflix. It's not notable for being scary, but it's, when it comes to special effects and just how realistic the zombies look and how realistic they're tearing through flesh. I mean, it's up there for sure.
Oh my
Um,
God.
so I can't say I can't really point to one specific. I would probably say it's just kind of we've seen a whole lot of these plots over and over again. And another
Hmm.
thing that's probably notable to mention is Hollywood has gotten into this habit of making remakes of the same original movies that we've seen, right? So Pet Cemetery, I was mentioning that they've done a
Hmm.
remake of it in the past like 2, 3 years.
Hmm.
Even recently, Salem's Lot, Stephen King's Salem's Lot. I watched that
Yeah.
recently on Max on HBO, and there's a remake, but there's an original of that as well. So Salem's Lot, there's a remake of that. The remake is not bad. that you should watch it. Night of the Living Dead, zombie movies. They've done a whole bunch of those, right? There's like
Hmm.
literally 10 zombie movies after
Yeah.
the original, right? So by the time, so when you've seen a whole bunch of these remakes, a whole bunch
Hmm.
of these renditions, it starts to kind of water down the effect, right,
Mm.
of the
Yeah.
whole horror movie genre. So
Yeah. So that's a good that's that I like how you took it there because like when you've seen
yeah,
everything done, because now they try to like
yeah,
how many times can you do a vampire movie or a vampire story?
exactly,
Now you have to now introduce
exactly.
something different because you know back in the days,
You have to do something
some
different. Exactly,
different, yeah, they can't walk in they can't walk at light in the night at light, you know, when it's light.
exactly.
Now they've made them powerful that they can walk, you know, in during
That's
daytime or
right.
something like that
That's
with
right. That's right.
Twilight or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right. Even
So
though
you
now that we talk about vampire movies, the one notable vampire movie that I really loved was 30 Days of Night. You gotta
okay.
watch that. Amazing, amazing, absolutely amazing. 30 Days of Night. So when we talk about taking it to a different level, a different path, I mean you should,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna mention it, I'm not gonna spoil it for your audience, but the general plot was they went to some place in Antarctica in which you know, a particular portion or time of the year, right?
Mm.
There's 30 days of night. So
Oh,
you can
okay.
just think about that from a vampire perspective, right? Within this time period, they just go crazy. They go
Crazy. Yeah.
crazy. And, the movie's building up the plot towards that 30 days of night. They come, apparently, they do it once every 100 years. And then but that was really good. That was really, really good.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out. So okay, now
Yeah.
this is where I wanted to really go to.
Yeah.
Given that, you know, we've established that, you know, Hollywood movies, Hollywood horror films have kind of like just reached the stale, they've just kind of like just had stalemate where they're not building on the creativity that
They're
they
not being
had years
inventive.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about horror films from like um from from abroad? Like maybe from like Mexico, from Europe.
International, yeah.
Yeah, or even remember when we used to grow up in Nigeria, we used to say like, man, Nigerian horror films are probably a little scarier than some Hollywood films and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that
yeah,
because
yeah.
they didn't have the technology to make
They
the
didn't have the
monsters.
technology.
But you
That's
know,
right.
in their simplicity, the monsters look real or something like that, and you
Right,
really scared you.
right,
So what do you say to that? Like the foreign horror films, like you think they're because they don't have the money that Hollywood has,
right,
they
right,
are,
right.
you know, kind of like independent films. They are able, their
Yeah,
creativity brings out like this, even though it's so simple, they bring out the
that's
essence
right.
of the scariness. Like, how do you, what would you say to that?
I think that's a great question, right? Because, and it goes back to what we're originally talking about as far as simplicity, right?
Hmm.
Nothing, it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. It doesn't have to be extra. It doesn't have to have too much. Sometimes you can just lead the audience, you can lead the moviegoers, you can lead the viewers, you can use your imagination, right, to fill in the rest. The director can use the audience's
Hmm.
imagination to fill in the rest, to fill in what could happen or whatever the case
Hmm.
is. But yeah, you bring up a really good point in which when you look at international movies, they're not going crazy on special effects. They're not going crazy on makeup. They're not going crazy on any of those things. It's just the power of suggestion, power of innuendo. Like when we go back to Nigeria and we look at those horror movies over there, I mean, what are they using? They're using powder. They put powder in the face, throw on a wig, throw
Yeah,
on like a white cloth, whatever it is, right?
yeah,
But it's more the power of suggestion. It's less about a ghost popping up on you and scaring you. It's about, okay, you're in pitch black darkness. You're
that
walking
white
down
silk.
something, and there's some
Exactly.
sort of apparition floating through your screen.
Yeah,
That's almost as effective as any special effects, a million or hundreds of $1,000 special effects you can spend money on. So
yeah. I
yeah,
think Hollywood needs to if they want to really
they need to
revive
pay
the horror,
attention. Yeah,
they need to pay attention to like the
yeah,
independent filmmakers and to the
yeah,
foreign films because they're doing it way
absolutely.
better now. You know, especially the ones coming out of Korea. From what
Yeah,
Korea,
yeah.
Japan, I think
Great.
those yeah, they're
That's
I think
right.
they're just they're killing it with the horror genre. I think Hollywood needs to take note
I
of those.
agree.
Go get those
I
writers.
agree.
Go get those writers and
Yeah,
those directors and bring them to
That's
Hollywood,
right.
and I think they would just change the
That's right.
thing. So
Yeah.
let's
Yeah. Absolutely agree.
Stephen King. We mentioned Stephen King. You know, remember back in the
Yeah.
days we used to just like worship Stephen King like the master of horror and stuff
That's
like that.
right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Talk about
I
his
mean, you
impact.
can't mention horror
Obviously,
movies
he's not.
without mentioning Stephen King, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, talk about the impact of Stephen King because he's not the only person, you know, the writer or something in that genre, but
Yeah.
he's become
Yeah.
the face of that genre. Talk about his impact over the decades, how he has influenced other writers, maybe filmmakers, or even fans of horror. Like, how do
Yeah.
you where do you
Yeah.
guys rank him? You know, in that genre.
I mean, Stephen King has to be up there. No way, no how.
Hmm.
If you twist my arm right now, you have a gun to my head, and you ask me mention top five people when it comes to horror movies, Stephen King has to be up there, right? And it's funny because Stephen King is actually he's written all sorts of all sorts of books. He's known for
Yeah,
fiction,
books.
nonfiction, whatever the case is, and it's not everything he does that's horror. There's some things
Yeah,
that he does that's thriller. There's some things I remember watching one of his um, on-screen adaptations was Stephen King about it starts with an L about thinner. That's the name of it. I don't
oh,
know if you've seen that thinner. That I think that was a Stephen
I've
King.
seen Thinner. Is that the one with
Yeah,
the Native American? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen that one. I've seen that
that's
one. That
right,
was pretty
exactly.
good. That was
That was
pretty
pretty
good. That was
good.
pretty good. Yeah,
So it's not a horror
yeah.
movie. It's probably more like a thriller. Um,
It's more like a thriller, like a dramatic thriller. It
yeah,
wasn't anything scary. It's just like the
exactly.
story just wowed you. Like, oh, what's going
It
on here?
was
You were
just
just, you
wow.
know,
It was
like
just
what?
wow, and it was very
Yeah.
effective too.
Oh yeah.
So I say that you can't. I mean, Stephen King is up there when it comes to it, right? About the clown, and that's also another movie that they've just done a remake of. The remake is actually pretty decent. You should watch it. But the
That
original,
I've
really
seen it.
good.
I've seen both of them because I remember
You've
the
seen both
old
of
one.
them, okay?
And then when I saw the new one, I was like, this is not bad. This is I would say
Yeah,
it's I don't want to say it's better than the first one because I can't remember the first one per se.
yeah.
But I was like, this one was really good. You know what I'm saying?
It was pretty good.
The
It was
it
pretty
was
good.
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
it Pet Cemetery, obviously Salem's Lot.
What's the one with the mother and the son that were cats?
Mother and Son that were cats.
The one that there were cats and stuff like that.
Um, it
You know the one
escapes.
I'm talking about, right?
It
You know the one
sounds
I'm talking.
familiar. Yeah, it sounds
Yeah, like
familiar.
you know, like when they I don't know, I can't remember the name of that film, man.
Yeah,
We watched a lot of Stephen King stuff back in boarding school, man.
that's
We
right.
watched a
That's
lot of
right.
that stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would
But
say
Stephen
Stephen
King is the
King did.
GOAT.
Oh,
Stephen King's GOAT is up there. But there were also notable names up there as well. Like I remember Clive Barker of Hellraisers, right? If you
yes.
really want to start to get fancy, Hellraisers, and there've been like 10,
I
10
I I 10 we saw the first couple of Hellraisers back in
exactly.
school too. I remember that
That
one.
was really good.
Um
That was Clive
yeah,
Barker.
what's Wes Craven?
Wes Craven, that's right. Wes
That's
Craven is
Nightmare
up
on
there
Elm
as well.
Street. Yeah. And then
Nightmare on Elm
you get
Street.
to the
Yep.
slasher films. The
You
slasher
get to the
films. So the
slasher
slasher films to me are
films.
not will
Yeah.
they be considered horror or just thriller?
I would almost bucket those into thriller because
Into thriller? Yeah.
outside the slasher movies, outside of just your initial jump scare, like there's really nothing else. So you'd always call that thrillers, right? So
Mm.
slasher movies, like was
Scream.
is it the one that wears the hockey mask? Anyway,
Oh,
um,
Jason was is it Jason or something
yeah,
like that?
Jason. The name's Jason
Yeah.
Voorhees
Jason Bourne,
or
yeah.
whatever the case
That's
is.
not that
That's right.
wasn't scary to me. That was just more like a
That
thriller.
wasn't
I was
scary to
never
me.
yeah, that was not scary at all. Or
Yeah,
you know, the Scream movies, that wasn't
the
scary.
Scream movies, those
They've
are
milked that.
slasher.
They got a series for that now. I'm like,
They got a whole
Scream
bunch.
was
That's
really
right. That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
What I know what you did last summer. That was
I know
just
what you did
that
last
was
summer. That's right.
honestly
Yeah,
they were fun to me because they were like the teen
yeah,
slasher era and stuff like
that's
that.
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
not it was
I know.
yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah,
So here's another thing.
yeah. So when we talk about
When
notable
these stories
characters, Stephen King, Clive
mm,
Barker,
mm.
Wes Craven, exactly.
Wes
You
Craven.
mentioned those
Yeah,
names. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So where these stories come from? Remember those like little scary stories when boarding school we used to tell ourselves, even though whether they were true or not true, you know what I'm saying? Like the Madame Koi
yeah,
Koi, the one that we know
yeah, yeah. I
she
know.
just you just see the shoes walking, or just
I
crazy
know.
stuff. We
Superstition,
used to
all
believe
those
those
stories that were, yeah,
superstitious and stuff
centered
like
on
that.
superstition. Yeah.
Superstition. You think that's where a lot of these stories come from, or because every culture I've learned that has their own version of a Dracula, have their own version
That's
of a
right.
vampire, have their own version of a werewolf. Every
That's
culture,
right.
every
Or
country,
abominable
so
snowman. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
exactly, they have some form of, they call it something else. They'll call it something else. But
Urban myth
I
or
remember my
whatever it
mom.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, I know my mom told me about she said something else. I was mentioning something about vampire, and she said it in Yoruba, like what they call them in Yoruba culture and stuff like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
we have that in Yoruba culture, but it's funny that they have that they have
Yeah.
it there in Yoruba culture. So talk
Yeah.
about how much those superstitious and folklore stories influence horror stories, because probably when you're growing up, you listen to them,
Yeah.
told by your granny or something like that, just to scare you to get
Yeah.
something to eat or something like that. Like if you don't eat your food, this thing's coming and gonna get you. And how maybe
Yeah.
that has influenced, people like me getting scared of watching
That's
horror
right.
films, like, oh, this reminds me of what granny used to say, what I'm saying, or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
think that plays a part in it, and how also it influences writers and
Yeah.
directors? And like, I remember that story and my
Yeah.
imagination went wild. Let me see if I can
Yeah.
use that imagination to bring this
Draw
story to
some
life.
sort of
Talk
parallel.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I would probably say, for movies, for horror movies, right? What's the biggest inspiration of art? It's life, right? Life. You're inspired, life inspires art, art inspires life. And so and those two are
Hmm.
almost interchangeable. So it's very hard to not to talk about life or superstition or these urban myths when you talk about these directors, authors, and so on and so forth, movie makers that weren't inspired by like these urban myths, urban legends, and all these other stories that could either be both local or
Mm,
international or whatever the case is, right? So I think those two are for sure play a part. They're very, very interchangeable.
mm,
But also to your point, some directors take those urban myths and urban legends and then blow it out and they take it and use it as
mm,
something else. Or they use, the superstition, the stories of those superstitious fairy tales and so on and so forth. And they expand on that plot and make it something very different.
mm.
Right. So it's for sure it's very
Yeah,
possible that those two
yeah.
have something to do with the other for sure. I know for a fact any movie that has to do with ghosts, that has to be inspired by life, right? Anything that has to do with
Mm.
ghosts or anything of that nature, that has to be inspired by life. There's no way.
And this movie behind me, even though I
Yeah,
had it in my top five scariest movie,
yeah,
I did say there that it's not really that scary. I mean, there were parts that were
yeah,
scary, at least towards the end,
yeah, yeah,
when you started to reveal, like, oh, this is what's going on, like this is who they are.
yeah,
To me, what I really was impressed with this was the telling that story from a different perspective. Usually
yeah,
I don't want to spoil it for everybody who hasn't seen it. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? This kind
yeah.
of story is told from one person's perspective. This time
That's
they
right.
told it from the other person's perspective. And
That's
now we
right. And
start
I
to
thought it was
see,
pretty,
like,
and I thought
oh,
it was pretty
it was
effective.
pretty
Yeah,
smart. Yeah, it was
yeah,
very effective and very smart, because you're like, oh, you're now getting into their world, like, oh, this is how they see things now. So we think, like,
yeah.
one party is disturbing the other party, whereas you are
Right.
disturbing the other party too. So
That's right. That's
I,
right.
I mean, and that to me, that was just brilliant story, or brilliant storytelling, good creative
I
writing,
agree.
because you don't
I
see a
agree.
lot of that in horror films nowadays. Like their creativity in that.
Yeah,
How I mean, just talk about this film. Just talk about,
yeah,
and how,
yeah,
because I believe I was hoping that this might influence the writing of horror films moving forward. It never really happened, but
yeah.
maybe,
To take it to a
maybe
different direction. Yeah, I totally
yeah.
agree. I remember watching the others and I was floored, right? Everything comes together, and I'm not going to spoil the plot of the movie, but everything comes together,
Mm,
and you have one of those moments watching the movie in which you're like, holy shit, right? The last 10 minutes
yeah.
of the movie.
This is
So whoever
yes.
hasn't seen it, go and watch it, right? And it was a very, very effective perspective as well, right?
Mm,
The perspective they took on the movie, and throughout the whole movie, it seemed like a pretty normal movie until
mm,
like the last 10, 15 minutes. And it dawns on you, okay, this is what's
like
going on. And so
what's
very
going on?
effective
Like this whole
storytelling. I don't know who's responsible for the movie. I don't know if it was an adaptation of a book or whatever the case is. But another movie that
yeah.
reminds me of that angle, that perspective is The Sixth Sense. If you remember, it's almost
Mm, mm,
very, very
mhm,
similar
yeah.
in terms of
Yeah.
style,
Yeah.
very similar in terms of perspectives, and taking another
Hmm.
perspective to explain the story. And it isn't until the last 10 minutes that you figure out, ah, this is what's
Oh,
going on.
this is what's going
Yeah,
on. This is what's going
yeah,
on. It
yeah.
yeah, it was
So
brilliant.
for
It was
sure.
brilliant. It was brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now we've let's come to this part now. Give me your top 10. I know your top five horror films of
Top
all time.
five.
Top five.
Top
It don't have to
five.
be in any particular order. Doesn't have to be in any
Doesn't
particular
have to be
order.
any particular
Just give me your
order.
top
It
five.
doesn't have to be
Yeah. Just your
multi-decade or whatever the
yeah,
case is.
this is your top five horror films, like, whatever category, whether it's because of the storytelling, the acting,
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
way the plot was
yeah,
unraveled, doesn't matter.
yeah.
The top five,
In no particular order, because that then will be
no
here all
particular
night.
order.
Yeah. So I would say top five. I would I would probably throw in there Bram Stoker's Dracula for sure. That deserves a mention. Bram Stoker's
Oh,
Dracula. Okay.
you know what? I remember us always talking about that Bram Stoker's
Yeah.
Dracula and just
Bram Stoker's
how much
Dracula.
of a
And I
class
mentioned Bram
That was
Stoker's
Francis
Dracula.
Ford Coppola.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
that
right.
was Francis Ford Coppola that directed that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was a book from I can't remember who's the
Yeah.
writer. It's one of those
Yeah.
Victorian books from the Victorian era. Yeah,
That's right.
so
That's
that
right.
was
And I really enjoyed
that's
that
a
movie
brilliant one. That's a
because
brilliant.
yeah, it was a different, because you've seen all the vampire movies. They've
Yeah,
taken it through different paths. They've told that
exactly.
same story
Hmm.
multi-dimensionally, but that one was
Hmm.
different. They told the story of Count Dracula from the perspective of him being a romantic guy, right? And again, I don't want to
Hmm.
spoil it. You could almost humanize the character, right? Up until then,
Yes, you
I
you
couldn't remember at any point in which you could humanize Count Dracula. But in that movie, you can somehow humanize him. You can almost sympathize or empathize with him.
yeah. See, my thing with Bram Stoker's Dracula was that
Yeah,
the film was a work of art. It was so
yeah,
artistic. The way
yeah.
it
It
was shot, the
was the way it was
costumes,
shot. Yeah,
everything.
agreed.
Yeah, and they said it.
Yeah,
I've always told people, like, when you set a movie in the Victorian era, you get the true essence of it.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
written
No,
during
they
the
did a
Victorian
phenomenal
era.
job.
It was
Yeah,
set, yeah, it was set during the Victorian era, and then the way it just the everything about it was just so good. The music, everything,
the
and
actors,
it was it.
Gary Oldman killed that.
Gary Oldman.
He
I
killed
mean,
that role.
he doesn't get a lot of
Yeah,
credit for how great
he
he
killed
is.
that role. Yeah,
Uh, he killed the role. You got Gary Oldman there. You got Anthony Hopkins. I know he's
yeah.
one of your
That's
favorite
right.
actors from
That's
back
right.
in the days.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
and I
I
remember,
think Keanu
what's his
Reeves
name?
wasn't Keanu Reeves was in the movie
Keanu
also.
Reeves was there.
Yeah,
Yeah, Keanu Reeves. We know the
star
writer.
studded. Yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of stars. That movie was, to me, was just a pure work of art. Brilliant movie.
yeah,
Brilliant. So let's go
yeah.
to your
So
next one.
I'll put that up there. I would put Omen. Remember Omen Damien from back in it.
Yes.
I put that in terms of
Yes.
scares, in terms of like just impact. And when I watched it,
Hmm.
how it sat with me for a long time. Omen is up there. And again,
Hmm.
I'm using the criteria of my top movies that really, as a horror movie enthusiast, really, really scared me. And it takes a lot to scare me. And this probably maybe has, now, maybe I'm lying. Bram Stoker's Dracula didn't scare me, but it deserves a notable mention because of how well the same genre of vampire movies was told. So Omen,
Yeah.
definitely up there,
Hmm.
Damien. We talked about Exorcist, the original Exorcist.
Got to put
That's
that
number
there.
three. What else? Is there anything else I can think of? Horror movie, horror movie, horror movie. We should throw in Pet Cemetery in there. No?
I was about to say like you can't. There's no way you
Yeah,
can't talk
we
about
should
Pet
probably
Cemetery.
throw in Pet
That
Cemetery. Yeah,
Pet Cemetery. That
we
that
should probably
that
throw in Pet
might be
Cemetery. Yeah,
that Pet Cemetery. That was crazy because here's the
yeah.
thing. Um,
We should
is
probably
I
throw in Pet Cemetery because again,
yeah,
the story of Pet Cemetery is just man, they've never told the story like this, the way it was told, right?
that's
Animals,
yeah.
right? We've talked about zombies, we've talked about human beings being raised from the dead
Yeah,
many
but this one's
times.
animals. Yeah, this one's just
Like who
animals
thinks
coming
about
back.
that? Who
Yeah,
thinks
I don't
about
want to.
that?
Let me not spoil the story, but go
Yeah,
watch the. I didn't see the remake, but go watch the
yeah,
originals, everybody. The original one from like
yeah,
1989 or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
That thing, the story was gonna blow your freaking mind. It's gonna blow your freaking
yeah.
mind.
Amazing,
That
amazing.
scared the living daylights out of me. Yeah, it
That's
was
right. So
amazing.
that's
Yeah,
number
go and
four.
then
And I think
there's number
the
four.
last one I would mention is just the Hellraiser series, the whole series. I can't point to one particular Hellraiser movie, but just the
Hmm.
whole genre of the series. And there's maybe like seven or eight of them. But maybe the first two
Yeah,
or three, just go and watch. Those are really good, really good.
yeah. I would say the first three. I would say the first three. I remember
The
watching the
first
first
three,
three.
yeah.
I didn't watch anything after that. Usually after the first three, then
It starts to
they
get
just
watered down, right?
it started to get watered down, and yeah. So I would say
Yeah,
the first two of the first three of a film, and
yeah,
then that's it. Hellraiser. I never remembered to put Hellraiser in my list, but now
yeah,
that you mention it, I'm probably gonna have to revise my list. But yeah,
yeah,
Hellraiser was there.
yeah. So I
Hellraiser
would
was there.
say
So
top
let's
five.
see.
Those are my top
Top
five.
five. That's good. Very
Yeah,
impressive. So yeah, very impressive list. So
yeah.
um, where do you think the future of the horror genre is gonna go from here?
Oh man.
Is it going to, you think it's fading like the
I
way
hope it's less
the
remakes.
Western
I
genre
hope
has
it's
gone
less
fading?
remakes. Yeah. I hope it's less remakes and more just I would love um just Hollywood to start to take a little bit more just take a little bit more risks with screenwriters, take a little bit more risk with the plots, take a little bit more risk with storytelling, right? And just be
Mm,
bold,
mm,
right? Tell stories from a very different perspective, right? Like zombies, we're talking about it. Tell it from another perspective. Tell it from the perspective of the zombie. And I think there have been instances in which they've tried to tell it from the zombies'
mm.
perspective, right? I'm just making
Zombies
things
point
on
of
the
view.
fly
Yeah.
from the zombies' point of view.
Yeah.
And
May
I think there's one or
yeah,
two movies
maybe. I
that
don't know.
they have told from that perspective, but they were more on
Mhm.
the humor side of things. But I'd
Mm.
love to see that. Same thing, we can never get old, tired of vampire movies, but tell it from a different perspective. Maybe
Yeah.
vampires in space, for all I care. Who knows, right? Who
You know
knows,
what?
right?
I think yeah. I think they did a good job with True Blood.
True Blood, yeah, yeah. True Blood, yeah,
They did a good job
yeah. The
with that
series, yeah,
up until
they did a pretty
yeah,
good job.
after the fourth season, then it started like kind of getting
Then it
weird and
started
stuff like that. But this
to
is what I
peter out, yeah,
yeah, but yeah, this is what I think they need to do with the horror film, the horror
yeah,
genre to
yeah,
get it back. Like I said, the genre for the what cowboy movies and the westerns died down. But I think this
yeah.
show kind of revived it. Yellowstone.
Yellowstone,
Yellowstone kind
agreed,
of revived the
agreed.
Western. Even though it's set in
Yeah, a
modern
little bit.
times, it kind
Yeah,
of has revived it. I think they need
agreed.
a television series, a major television series to revive it.
Okay.
Kind of like the way epic fantasies were revived back. Well, obviously the movie Lord of the Rings revived it,
Oh,
and then
on
the
the
television
westerns,
series
you're
with Game
talking
of
about
Thrones.
westerns. They need a good
No, I'm talking about
western.
westerns. Yeah, I'm talking about westerns, and I'm comparing, and I'm also saying fantasy, like the medieval fantasies, like Lord of the Ring and Game of
I
Thrones,
see.
how they influence those
Oh,
two
Game of Thrones.
genres.
Okay.
I think
Gotcha.
the horror genre needs a television show, a major television show to
That's like a series.
revive it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, think of Sopranos, the television series, how that kind of like
Yeah.
revived
Yeah.
the mafia genre and stuff
Yeah.
like that. They need a
Yeah.
major television series to revive it. You know what I'm saying? And I think they'll be back.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean,
Yeah.
they've
So,
tried, right? I mean, think of Walking Dead. Even though Walking
well,
Dead wasn't really,
it's not,
yeah,
it's, I
it
mean,
wasn't
something
really,
really like the traditional horror. Like, think
yeah,
of like an
yeah,
Exorcist, but a series of something, a series. Can you
yeah. I
imagine
know.
people sitting
Yeah,
down watching that every Sunday night and getting scared
that would be
every
amazing.
Sunday
Yeah,
night?
yeah,
That, you know, I
yeah,
think if you can
yeah,
pull
yeah.
that
That's a
off,
good point. Yeah,
you would revive, you would really change the
yeah,
horror film, the horror genre landscape.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
they got it, like you said, they got to take a risk. They've just got to
yeah.
take a
Take
risk.
risks, take gambles. Less of the remakes. And if you're going to do a remix, do a really, really good job. Tell it from another
Mm.
perspective, and don't just remake it.
So, so what if Hollywood comes to meet to knock on your door like, hey, Mr. Tolu, we want you
Yeah,
to come and run our horror department. Would you take that? Would you take them up on that
in a
offer?
heartbeat, in a heartbeat, in a heartbeat. And the
Really?
way my mind works,
Wow.
absolutely. I wouldn't even hesitate for 1 second. I wouldn't even hesitate.
Really? Oh wow,
I would take that
that's
on, man. That
gangster.
would be a
That's gangster.
great challenge. That would be a great challenge to take on.
Oh man.
And I
Okay.
don't scare
Okay.
easy. And I think I have a pretty imaginative mind. And with the likes
Yeah,
of
that's what I'm
you
scared of. Like,
helping me,
oh,
yeah. Oh gosh, forget about it.
listen. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you know what?
Yeah,
I might have to get in
yeah,
contact with some people that I know. Like, yo, I need y'all to get
yeah.
my dude up in New York, man. He's got some
Right,
ideas.
right,
You
right.
know what I'm saying? Actually, you know
Yeah,
what? The funny thing, the guy who shot my couple of short films, he's actually Nigerian,
yeah.
and he's a
Is
huge
he
horror
okay?
fan too. Maybe I need to
Oh
link y'all
yeah,
two
okay.
together.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Maybe.
because
Yeah,
he wants to like he wants to get into like writing the horror films and stuff like that. I told him like,
right,
yo,
right, right, right.
we'll sit down and do something. But if that happens, man, I'm calling you and be like, listen, let's put
Yeah,
heads together
please
and
let
see
me
what we
know.
can
By
do.
all means.
So,
Yeah, if I'm not as
oh,
busy,
I'll
by
let
all
you
means,
know.
I'll
I'll
take
let
it
you
on.
know.
I enjoy this stuff, so
No
this
problem.
is like second nature for
Yo,
me.
man.
It wouldn't
Yo,
even feel
Tolu,
like
man.
work.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yes,
thank you
yes,
very much for doing this, man. Believe it or not, you're the very
yeah.
first guest.
Oh yeah,
So
awesome,
you're the
awesome,
first guest.
awesome.
Yeah, right. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
I truly appreciate it, man. Like I say, guys, me and this guy go
absolutely.
way back since
Mhm.
1992.
Yep,
We've got a whole lot of if we sat down and told you the stories that we what we've been through
we've had from back in
from
the
back
days.
in the
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
Oh man,
yeah.
and you know what's so funny?
Mhm.
I remember when I'm telling my American friends about boarding school, my experience in
Yeah,
boarding school and stuff like that,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
just telling them all the ups and downs. At the end of the day, I realized, you know what? We actually had fun.
We had a great time. Yeah, those
We
were the
had a great time.
experiences that shaped, where we
Yeah,
came from. Yeah.
I would never,
And it's nothing
exactly,
but
I would
positive,
never change
solid,
it.
amazing stories, right? Right?
Exactly, I
Yeah.
would never change it. I loved
I
it. I
wouldn't
loved
change a
every
thing.
minute of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Now that I think back of it, remember back then we used to
Yeah.
complain like, man, F
Yeah.
this, F that. Nah, nowadays I'm like, that was an experience.
Hmm.
Loved it.
That
And for
was an
that, man,
experience. Yeah.
I say thank you, bro, man. And maybe we'll do this next time
No,
for
thank you.
another
Thanks for the time. Thanks for the opportunity. This was a lot of fun. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. This was fun. You know what? You might have
Yeah.
just given me a little bit of courage to like, you know what? If he let me go watch some horror films, man. Because
Yeah.
me, I just hold my
Absolutely.
Bible and hold the crucifix and just and just sit there and
Ah,
watch it.
and just
But
sit
yeah,
there
we'll see,
watching.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But
All
yeah,
right.
Tolu, again, man, thank you very much, man. I truly appreciate this, man. And
That's
say,
right.
give my regards to your brothers.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys are doing well.
Yeah.
When
We're
next
doing
I'm in
great.
New York, man, I'm gonna hit you up and we can
Yeah.
hang out and do something, man. And
Absolutely.
when you go to Nigeria, man, tell Tosin and all of them, man, hey,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna
blessings,
say
man.
hi.
One of these days
Yeah.
we all gonna link up.
That's
And
right. We're gonna tap in.
until that, man, yeah. And for that, man, we're out, y'all. Y'all take it easy until the next episode, man. We're out.
All right, man. Peace, brother.
All right, man. Take it easy, bro. Thank you.
All right.